Let's start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Hope everybody enjoyed Christmas. Now we look forward to the new year, another year. The next item on approving the minutes of December 19th, we're not going to do that. We'll do that at our next meeting. Mrs. Powell still off. She hasn't had a chance to do this. So we'll do both of those probably on as soon as she's back in full gear on the second. So we won't do that this time. Okay, public comments. No one has signed in unless Mr. King is planning to talk. And he's not saying a word. So let's go down to the reports. Ray Ellison, who gives us a finance update. Mr. Ellison.
Yeah, I thought I had a few more minutes.
No. Got that UCLA, you ready to go.
Yeah, we can continue that conversation. I did the reports this time for you. I haven't been able to do that for a while. I couldn't get Weavis to cooperate with my spreadsheets, and everything was off by about $400,000. Somehow it's gotten back to $9.60, which is a journal entry I got to make to correct the bank account. So everything on here is good. That top sheet is just like a statement of cash flow for the period up through November 30th. I can't do anything for December until we close the month of December, which is normally around the 10th, 12th of January. So the second page, second, third, and fourth page is the actual balance sheet for up through today. So the cash numbers are different. The cash at the end of November was, what, 5.6 million. It's dropped down. I think if you were to look at today, it's 3.6 million. We still got some state aid that's going to come in this month. It's not been received, so that number will go up over $4 million. But remember when I told you that last year in February how we dropped around $2 million in cash, which concerned me, and I look back at that trend. Well, if you look at the first page, you see that our expenditures outweighed our revenues for the month. That's going to continue for a couple of months to where it eats that cash balance down. But it rebounded back last year, March and April and May. It'll probably do the same thing, I hope, this year. But I'm not going to be real concerned that that's going to drop. So you shouldn't be concerned either. I'll let you know when to be concerned. The collections were up over last year. Okay, we were down. Remember I talked about that, how what we were worried about last year was going to happen this year. We're going up. But when you look at those collections, 75% of the money that we're getting is from last year. So I'm thinking that that's just going to fall. That I can't see that trend because I don't remember it being that way last year. Whenever you do the calculations, in order for me to put these in the right category into the accounting system, it breaks out last year's from this year's. And those numbers, whenever I was doing this last fiscal year, the number for the previous year just wasn't that much. This year it's really high. So our collections this year is not that great. We're getting money from last year, if that makes any sense. So I'm thinking as we go forward, those numbers got to come down, people paying their taxes late. I'm thinking that that's got to fall, and we're going to get back to where I thought we were going. So right now we're okay, but it's going to go down. It's just a gut feeling, just based off of what, an educated guess off what happened last year. So that concerns me a little bit. I was real happy if they went up, but when I started really looking at what was coming in, it was previous year's taxes. So there's not a whole lot to tell. I've encumbered everything. All the carryover entries have been made, so the balance sheet is an accurate look at you know how we're doing with the cash and everything else that's on that. So,
Ray, are there any particular departments or line items that are of concern to you?
well, I went through that. Each one of these these reports, and there's nothing that really stuck out to me as being different from the previous years. There was one that looked a little bit odd, but the transfers, we just made a bunch of transfers the other day, and that kind of looks a little odd. They were normally made a little bit later in the year, or they have been. At least last year I made them later in the year, so they're showing up earlier. When you look at these, like general fund expense by department versus prior years, it looks at everything up through the end of November. So you kind of get a snapshot of where we are compared to previous years. And that's the same way with the tax revenue for a 5-year period. It's about 6 pages in, five pages, 6 pages in, right up to the balance sheet. You can see this is tax revenue 5 years at the top, and I got the amount circled for this year, the collections, that's up through November. And you can see where we're above last year's and still below what we were 2 years ago. Now, if the trend keeps happening where we're getting a lot of prior year tax revenue, then we could be just fine. And then maybe that'll continue for a few years, and it'll look like we're getting our actual, what the levy call is. But if somehow it falls like I think it will, then our collections are gonna go down, or they're not gonna be as great as what they were last year. We've got cash, but it's gonna start going down. And the next one's starting right now, and that'll continue through February, I'm sure.
Does your state aid always, do you always receive it on the same times? I mean, a couple
Yeah,
times
and a lot of it we get on the 25th, 26th, 27th, that
Once a
stuff's
month?
not.
Or twice?
There is, do they pay, I think they pay different things at different times of the month, and I got a schedule that details that. And I can't even remember what our monthly amount is now.
I mean, do you get more from the state in the latter part of the year, or is it throughout, pretty consistent throughout the whole year?
There's 2 months where they give us more, and I'm thinking it's April and May.
Well, it's one of the,
It's not the last 2 months, it seems like it's either March and April or April and May, so that's coming up. And maybe they know that most of the expenditures happen, it seems like it's, you know, December, January, and February is when we get hit with most of our expenditures. I guess stuff, you know, school year starts and things start getting paid, you know, in the later part of the fall, and it just eats at your money.
I was thinking that in the spring or something like that. It's more-
I think it's April and May, and I wish I could remember the monthly
I was just curious.
amount, but it goes up.
But the important thing right now is we're still solvent and.
Yeah,
don't have any major
we're okay
concerns.
right now, and hope that people keep paying old taxes. That's, well, if they pay this year's taxes, then we'd be in better shape, but,
I'm sure a lot of people have that. Anybody have anything of particular concern? We'll have a chance to look at this by January the 2nd. I'm sure if anybody has any questions or concerns, I'll talk about this then. Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, thanks, Ray. Very good. We'll hear from you again here in a minute. All right, the next item on there is Mr. Meek gives that, is going to provide a legal update in executive session. And so what we're going to do is, if everybody's agreeable with that, we'll move that to the end of the agenda and do all of our other items to do that last. That way we don't have to make anybody sit out in the cold. Mr. King, that's it, let's talk about it. Okay, let's go to the administrative section. Motion, please. So moved. Mr. Baker? Second. Second by Mr. Curry. Jeff?
Okay, item A, school volunteers who on occasion may also serve as bus chaperones for athletic events, academic competitions, or school outings, and have completed volunteer orientation. Item B is the adoption of revised policy 8510, which is our wellness policy. Rhonda Kersey and Angie Pritchard presented the policy to the board a month ago. The policy remains as it was at that time. There's not been any revisions made to it. So what you're adopting today is the version of the policy that you saw a month ago. Item C is a policy, or policies for 30-day public review and comment. These are two new policies. The first one is policy 2412, which is our homebound / hospital instruction program. This policy reflects changes that was made at the state level recently. So Mr. Pritchard, who's the administrator responsible for homebound, has gone in and made revisions, and those are highlighted in your agenda. The big piece here that's been changed, that's being revised, is that is in the very first paragraph, that students or parents that want their child to be homebound has to provide a document from a licensed physician who specializes in that particular health condition that would prevent their child from attending school. It used to be just from a general physician. So that language has changed. That's a big change. So you'll see that that's referenced in two or three other places here. The camp is highlighted in this policy. But in the middle of that page, it points out that the services, the homebound services, may not replace full-time instruction on an ongoing basis. The expectation is that students will return to the regular classroom. And the schedule for home hospital services must include adequate instruction time and provide a location determined by the county, not necessarily the student's home. So that's a change as well from what we've had in there in the past, where homebound was kind of open-ended, and we've had students in there for several months at a time, and all they have to do is remove that doctor's excuse. So this lets the parents know that it's not going to be a long-term situation.
But if we put them on homebound, what about that?
Now, we put students at ALC, and even for us, for us to put someone on homebound, there has to be a doctor's excuse. So, and this policy would require that even if we are involved in that process, it has to be someone that's a specialist in that particular area.
I noticed down here, is this just something new at the, next to the last paragraph? Parent or guardian may be required to transport to a designated location. Is that, I think they've always done that. Is this just
Yeah,
something?
this is just to make sure it was in writing.
And I just point out that whoever transcribes this, if you turn to the second page, first thing you'll highlight if there's a word missing. The word "be" should be in there somewhere, between could and limited.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I don't know if we just copied this over or,
Could have been. We'll make a correction.
sorry, can't help but edit it.
So it's on page 2.
Yeah, just say could be limited, instead of could limited.
Any questions about the homebound policy? Okay. Second one is policy 5200, which is our attendance policy. There were just a couple of revisions to this policy. The big change is on page 3, it's highlighted. All documentation relating to absences shall be provided to the school not later than 3 instructional days after the first day the student returns to school.
What's the purpose of that?
I don't know.
Well,
I wanna know what the purpose is, because that's a real pain in the butt for someone who has kids in the school system. Normally, you get a doctor's excuse when you take your child to the doctor. Sometimes you don't. And getting a doctor's office to fax or email you an excuse sometimes is kind of difficult. I mean, I'm all for this being an aspirational standard, but there should be an exception, because it's actually caught my kids before this 3 days. So I think the high school enforces this policy already this year.
Yeah, it's been in place since the beginning of the school year.
what are the repercussions if you don't do that?
It's an excused
I mean,
absence.
you can't go back and change it later on?
No, it's an excused absence.
I mean, I know the flip side of that are those that, you know, you go 2 or 3 months and you still don't have anything, and they're, you know, they may get turned into the truant or the defense directors, and then they start getting with the parents, then they all of a sudden come in with multiple
Yeah.
excuses from 5 months ago.
Yeah.
So I, you know, there's two sides, so
Yeah,
I
there's a
understand the
balance.
rationale behind it. I just didn't know whether you could, if they violated that, if they were, if it could be.
There's no excuse
It's
for
just
that.
this is a state thing, Jeff.
State.
This is a state requirement.
Mr. Pritchard attended, when was that meeting? About 3 weeks ago? These revisions were provided, so, and those court systems, they've had some say in this as well. And I think it goes back to what you said previously about, when students are truant, having some of those types of issues or concerns, that oftentimes those excuses will come in and just one wall, right, get stacked of them at one time. I think they're trying to prevent that from happening in the future.
Well, some of these aren't necessarily medical, right?
Right.
I mean, I could write excuse for my comment.
I mean, here's a situation where this bites a student, and I've had this happen with my girls. Student takes an excuse, somehow it gets lost in the mix. You get the report card and you realize they have an excused absence and you know that's not right. Then you can't turn it. You can't get a second copy of that excuse to take in after the grading period's over because more than 3 days has passed. I mean, this is, I understand it, but from a parent, practical perspective, this is draconian. That there needs to be either an official exception to this in certain circumstances or something that we can do unofficially. Because absences play roles into a lot of things. Where the kids get to take trips and different activities they get to engage in, things they get to do at the school. So if the child truly had a doctor's appointment and an excused absence and something gets mixed up in the bureaucracy, the excuse gets lost, it's not fair that child gets punished when it's as simple as bringing in another excuse. And I know this has happened with my kids. I'm not pointing fingers at particular schools, but it's happened where I've had to get, or my ex-wife has had to get second excuses and resubmit for the kids. So, anyway.
Let me ask you this. Now, it's on a 30-day comment period here, right?
Right.
Now, but has it already been adopted by the state board of
The
education?
state just recently adopted this.
So, I guess we can assume that they had a comment period
Right.
when none of us were really aware of things like this effectively.
In those situations you just described, were you able to?
No, got an excused absences.
But at this point, the state has adopted, and this doesn't appear to be a lot of alternatives on this. Being
No,
the state
right,
policy.
because it's a state policy.
So if that's the case, as a practical matter, why are we having it on a comment period? If we can't change anything about it, why are we putting it on a
Well,
comment
we can
period? Why
add
would-
to, Rowdy, we can add to the local policy. We got to at least have a minimum of what the state requires. We can go in and make revisions to our county policy.
But if we add something to it, does the state have to approve it?
But
So we can add to this policy?
there would need to be some exception of some sort there.
I must add a sentence.
I don't care what it says, I mean, I personally know that situation has happened and, you know, I've also seen the flip side where people suddenly realize they're in big trouble for absenteeism and all of a sudden the friendly family doctor submits excuses for 42 days they missed last semester. That's not what I want to prevent, that doesn't help, but I want surely the child that has a doctor's excuse or a legitimate excuse, maybe even limited to doctor's excuses, to have some kind of an exception if there's a foul like what's happened. So, I'm not asking for much.
I'll get with Mr. Preacher when he comes back. We'll take another look at this.
Yeah, just, I mean, think about it, something very, very limited but very practical that would help in that situation.
Well, because not all of them require doctor's excuses and all, but there are circumstances, let's say a death in the family, and you're far away, and the families had to travel out of state or something. And, it's a difficult time anyway, and then for them to come back, maybe they can't do it in a timely way, and all of a sudden, I can't turn in
Then you forget to submit the excuse 3 days after your dad died.
well, things like that, but you look at it. Okay. What else?
Let's
There's
see,
another one
under
on there?
section D, under county attendance director, 70 pages.
Look for the yellows.
Three more pages over, the county attendance director, second paragraph says, in the case of 3 total unexcused absences of a student during the school year, the attendance director or his or her assistant may serve written notice to the parent, guardian, or custodian of such student. That did say shall, so that's been revised and just says may. And again, that was a change in state code. And then down in the next section says, when calculating unexcused absences for the purpose of making complaints against a parent, guardian, or custodian before a magistrate, unexcused absences resulting from suspensions or expulsions from school shall not be considered.
Should I even ask about that? I mean, if you're suspended, we know why you're absent, right?
Right.
How can that not be excused, maybe not excused, it's justified, is it? I mean, would we really count a child as being unexcused absent when we've suspended or expelled them?
No, we don't count them, right?
Right, it says here that they don't have to. Well, it says they shall not be
Yeah, so
considered.
they're not counted.
Yeah, but were they counted before?
And you know what,
I
this
think they are
is,
unexcused.
this is complicated as well, because this also plays into the new accountability system that's being built right now, where the number of students, the percentage of students who are suspended from school counts against the school in some shape or fashion. Bill, looking at you, because I'm trying to think what that language says. It's not anything official, it's just a draft form what the state's working on right now, but this is in here because of the new accountability system.
But
I mean, I'm glad it's in there. I mean, sometimes common sense escapes the drafting of policies.
Well, but suspension and expulsions have been unexcused absences,
They have.
and they still are under this, right? So that hasn't changed, it's just what action you can take. But they've always been unexcused. So
Is there a reason?
yeah,
call
you gotta
that?
make your children behave, or else we're gonna toss them out, and then we're gonna.
You're gonna go to court because your kids are absent because we expelled them and let them go to school.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
You're learning.
I have this problem in the practice of law as well, that your common sense rarely exists.
It's not common.
No, I mean, clearly there's much more behind the addition of this than I know. But I'm glad it's here. I'm glad now that,
But see, when you bring them into the office, like what Mr. Linville used to do, and the parent, you have a conference with them, you say, so-and-so here, these are unexcused absences, I'm gonna have to suspend them. You know, if they get very many of these, they may have to go to the courthouse director, and might have to go to the courthouse.
but you knew, Scout,
They show up today in court with doctors.
That's right, 100 of them.
even though little Johnny was expelled, suspended, he was also sick. So I have a doctor's excuse for all 19 days he was suspended this
He
year.
got sick.
A little bit late. Okay, sorry.
I'll get with Mr. Pritchard, and we'll take a look at your concern around it and see if there's maybe some additional language we can put in there. For exceptions,
Just a phrase.
a phrase.
Okay, Dick, what else?
And that's all the administrative items.
All right. Okay, those are two policies on review, a couple of them I want to look at, see if there's legal possible changes. Other than that, we're just awaiting anything from the public. Is that all you guys put on the administrative items?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, let's go to finance. Motion, please.
I'll second.
Larry and Carol. Larry second, or made the motion, Carol second. Okay, Blake.
Okay, schedule of invoices totaling $774,283.94 is attached. And if you got any questions, give me a call.
Say that number slowly this time.
$774,283.94.
All right. Okay, anybody have anything for Mr. Ellis on that? If not, is that an all yes on the finance motion?
Yes.
All right, all yes. All right, let's go to personnel. Have motion for that? Fred?
Second.
Larry? Bill?
Okay, item A, that should read employment of professional personnel, not extracurricular. And that would be effective school year 18-19, not 17-18. Item B would be employment of extracurricular personnel. You think two things we can get right.
Sometimes it makes it harder to do.
You look at these, I didn't catch that one till just now, we look at it, we're good. But and as far as, I handed out the sheet, it had changed last week, except with Leah Adkins to be going to kindergarten next year. We have principal interviews set up for the 5th of January, and then we'll have a name the next week.
Mr. Smith filling in.
Mr. Smith will be filling in over, yes.
So he'll have to come back.
He'll have to come back to work.
Okay. Okay. When's the next posting for that bill?
We'll go up January the 2nd.
That's when it'll go out?
Yes, because if we put one up, if you're not in school, those days don't count. When employees are not working, if we put one out, it would just been extended till then, you know.
I didn't know. What happens in the summer?
Well, that's a little different, but we've gotten in trouble posting things over Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter break, and somebody say, well, I wasn't working, I didn't see the posting.
Well, okay.
So it's happened in the past, so we got to do it as well as we can.
You might be able to do it, but it's not always the best thing to do. Okay. Okay, on the personnel items, the two of them, then all yes?
Yes.
All right. Okay, now, does anybody have any comments or concerns that like before we entertain Mr. Pinkett's motion?
I would like to mention that Greg Gosney will be here next Tuesday evening to provide the board a maintenance update. He'll talk about Midway Elementary School, the sewer treatment plant, the annex. He'll also talk about Duval, where he's working to find another engineer to come in and take a look at the situation of the ceiling of that building. See if I can do something else. But anyway, he will be here next Tuesday to provide an update presentation on maintenance. Rod Cummings will be here as well for a transportation update. And I may, if need be, may ask Kevin to come around next Tuesday night. If we can't come up with some language or to have some follow-up discussion about this policy. So, that's it.
Any board members have anything else? Okay, as you said earlier, Mr. Midget requested a executive session for a legal update. Do we have a motion to do that? Rowdy makes that motion at 1:29.
Second.
Second from Mr. Wilkerson. Is that an all yes to go into executive session for a legal update?
Yes.
All yes, okay.